All right, I want to talk to Eddie Scarry. He is the author of the book, Privileged Victims: How America's Cultural Fascists Hijacked the Country and Elevated Its Worst People. It's available for pre-order, comes out in January. Eddie went to the border. He works for the Washington Examiner as a columnist. Went to the southern border. I want to debrief you, Ed, and you're coming to us from Washington, on what you saw. First of all, where'd you go?
We went to El Paso. We saw one facility there, and then we traveled about 30 minutes away to Clint, where they got another facility.
Okay, and who were in these facilities?
In the first one, you got families, so that's if it's husband and wife or man and woman who have a child together. They cross. They're placed in this facility. That's when it's in El Paso. When we got there were about 20 or so people in there. When we went to Clint, about 30 minutes away, that's the unaccompanied minors. So that's just children who show up in Texas on American soil. They take them into custody, and the kids are just by themselves. Or what they do is they separate them from a smuggler or from someone they determine is not their actual guardian or not their actual parent. They put them in there.
There are only 20 in the El Paso detention facility?
In the first one, there was about 20, so that's El Paso, that's the families. In the second one, which was unaccompanied children, there was about 17.
Okay, so that's not a big number. That's not a large number. Were the facilities, were they okay for the in both places?
Yeah, well, first I will say that this was an operation that was conducted by the Public Affairs Department of DHS and ICE. So you take that into account, that these places, I'm sure, were cleaned up and to some degree, but yes, they were very clean facilities. There was food everywhere. There were mattresses for everybody. They weren't overcrowded like we had read about. At one point, they did say, the agents were very forthcoming that yes, they were at one point. They've seen a decrease in June of the number of people who are crossing the border. So they said they were able to kind of get a grasp in that sense. And then also on top of that, they were talking about how with the decrease, they were able to put different systems in place. For example, instead of agents having to prepare food, do the laundry for everyone, they have contracted those things out. So it's a much smoother running process.
Okay. So did you do any investigating into how bad it was, say, 4 months ago? Was it chaos? Was it a situation where the migrants were suffering?
I did not have to do any investigating. I listened to DHS, I listened to the Health and Human Services, and I listened to the Pentagon. They all said that this was at the breaking point. They all said their facilities were overcrowded. They all said that our facilities were overwhelmed. Our resources were overwhelmed. There was a little thing called a national emergency that the president declared recently. So I didn't have to do investigating. I just listened to the departments. They said this was true. And yet still, just because these two facilities were not, when we saw them in a dilapidated shape, all that means at this point is that they've got a better handle on the people that are flowing into the country. Those people are then turned loose. They've got the contractors that make the process a lot more seamless. It didn't do anything to hamper the issue at hand.
Did they tell you how many people they've let loose, how many people crossed here illegally and are now in the country doing what they want to do?
The numbers change month to month. I can tell you over the course of just this year, starting in January, but you can go back to the fiscal year, which is I think September, it's hundreds of thousands. They have hundreds of thousands that have come in. 90% of them that are screened for the asylum, their first asylum test, they're then given a court date. That court date is not for between 2 and 5 years before they actually see it. So let's see, you look at 90% of hundreds of thousands, what does that give you? You're still at hundreds of thousands.
So they don't send them back to Mexico to wait for the asylum adjudication. They let them come to the United States. If they have somebody, a friend or an uncle or somebody like that, then they let them go. And the government pays for their transportation, right?
Oh, sure. Not only that, they pay for the clothing, they pay for the medicine, they pay for the legal counsel, in addition to anything else that, especially because they come with children, that entitles them to all sorts of legal protections, legal entitlements, free schooling, in many cases free housing or subsidized housing at the very least.
So it doesn't sound like a concentration camp, does it?
Oh, absolutely not. It's almost a hotel. It's almost a resort.
Yeah, don't say that because they'll come after you. ACLU filed a lawsuit yesterday against the new policy that if you want to apply for asylum, you have to first apply in the country you traverse, which would be Mexico on the southern border, Canada for the north. All in all, I believe that the Democratic Party has hurt itself by its open border posture, that most Americans do not want hundreds of thousands of people in this country on asylum claims. They feel that a lot of them are bogus. Asylum is supposed to be a political situation where your life is in danger by a government, not gangs in your neighborhood. We of course feel sorry, but we can't take everybody. The Democratic Party is let them all in, pay for everything, including their health care, and that's okay. Do you believe that will hurt the Democrats in the upcoming election?
It will hurt them, and that's why you will see them, on the one hand, say exactly what you're saying, which is that we should effectively have open borders, decriminalize crossing unauthorized into the country, give them free health care. And then the next second, they'll say, well, no, that's not what we believe. We all believe in border security. So yes, of course they lie about that. And then also, I just want to throw at you, it's not just Americans who believe this. I just did a story at the Washington Examiner about Mexicans. It's about 55% are saying they believe the Central Americans that are coming into their country and staying for one reason or another, they should all be deported. That's the same case in Western Europe. Every country that has a remote sense of stability or development believes that their borders should be protected. It's not just America.
Yeah, I was just in Austria, and they don't take any. None. Austrian government,
Sure.
No. It's going to slap the door shut. Nobody. Hey, Eddie, we really appreciate it. Thanks very much. We look forward to your upcoming book.